Hello, dear viewers. Today we're going to be looking at Afghanistan and how the Taliban has ruled that country since taking over. Let's begin. So, the Taliban has been in power in Afghanistan for more than 1 year, and I just want to talk about what they've done. They First of all, we have to recognize that they did not come to power legitimately through elections, which was how Afghanistan governments have come to power for the last 20 years when America was occupying that country. They came through force, but it seems now that they have complete control of the country, and I want to see how they've done, whether the lives of the Afghan people have improved or gotten worse. Let's begin. Now, we first have to start with saying that in the 20 years between the Taliban governments of the 90s and now the 2020s, the governments was hardly a panacea for Afghan citizens, especially for women. However, the situation did improve. Between 2001 and 2021, women leaders had been elected to represent their communities at the local and national level, and despite threats of violence, women made up more than a third of the 2018 electorate. Maternal mortality was cut in half between 2000 and 2017, and life expectancy for women increased by 8 years. So we can see some of the good results of America's war in Afghanistan and their nation building efforts. This wasn't only due to America, this was also due to, first of all, the rest of NATO, and also India, which was a donor country to Afghanistan and helped build several infrastructure projects. And now the Taliban has come into power, and this time they are not just killing their political rivals, which was done in the 1990s, but they are also targeting women's rights activists, among others, who had pushed a more progressive agenda. In May 2022, the Taliban officially announced that all women must wear head-to-toe coverings when in public and encouraged Afghan women not to leave home at all, formalizing a stance that they had taken since the capture of Kabul in September 2021. This is, in my opinion, a disgraceful decision by the Taliban, but not surprising considering they're very backwards in their views on women. Um, and yeah, I'm not saying that there's anything inherently wrong with wearing coverings like the burqa. If a woman wants to wear that, she has every right to do so. However, she should not be forced to do so. And definitely, they have the right to leave the home. I mean, this is ridiculous. And then, how can the United States deal with the Taliban? First of all, as this article says in early paras, they should not try to appease the Taliban and expect it to change. It's not going to. What they need to do is to simply work to limit the ability of the regime to inflict harm on its people. Well, this part I disagree. They should just work to limit ability with that Taliban regime. That's it. What the Taliban does to its own people is not America or any other country's concern. And this point called by providing robust support to civil society organizations seeking to protect civilians and activists in the short term and create sustainable change in governance in the long term. This is absolutely not what the United States or any country should do right now. Uh, Afghan civil society is a matter for the Afghan people to handle, not foreign countries. And supporting these civil society organizations will just cause them to lose any legitimacy that they had in the eyes of the common Afghans because they'll be seen as puppets of foreign countries, which is what in fact they might become. So now, what good have the Taliban done? They have caused taxation and revenue collection to become streamlined and centralized. This is perhaps the only major undertaking the Taliban have managed in the economic realm, which collapsed completely and immediately after Western donors withdrew billions in aid as the group took power. And now Taliban has struggled to manage challenges in urban areas and regions of the country home to non-Pashtun ethnic communities. The reason for this is because since the American invasion, the Taliban has been controlling several, not all the rural areas, but majority of the rural areas, and the urban areas were under greater control of the Afghan government. And so this is why we can see that the urban areas are challenging the Taliban, and the Taliban is mainly a Pashtun group. Most of the Taliban's leaders, including many top military commanders, are Pashtuns from a handful of southern provinces. And so this makes non-Pashtun ethnic communities, which were historically marginalized communities, feel as if that they don't have a voice in the government. And now what's worse is that the Islam local branch of the Islamic State has repeatedly targeted Shias and Hazaras in parts of Kabul since the Taliban came to power. So we can see that there is a fight between the Taliban and the Islamic State. The reason for this is because the Islamic State has attempted to position itself as the most legitimate jihadist group in the country, challenging the Taliban's authority. The Taliban have weakened the group but have struggled to restrict their violent attacks and their violent crackdowns against the communities that have traditionally supported the Islamic State in Afghanistan have laid seeds for future recruitment. So, this is a problem with religious fundamentalism. It causes each next group to claim to be the legitimate interpreters of the religion and that they are have a greater say to wield power over the country, and it's a never-ending cycle. So that's what we can see from the Taliban. The economy has collapsed due to aid being pulled out and due to the general fact that no growth has happened. The Taliban has not encouraged industry in the country. No country in the world has recognized them as legitimate power, including countries that are outside the West, such as Russia and China, which have interacted with the Taliban. And India too has opened some diplomatic channels with Taliban, but still none of them have recognized the Taliban. This is because for the Asian countries, because the Central Asian countries uh, fear the Taliban, that they will be hostile to the ethnic communities that are present in their countries, like the Tajiks and Uzbeks. And of course, the West will not recognize the Taliban because they are against women's rights, which is an important part of American and Western foreign policy. So, yeah, and I think the Taliban has also not built any industries in Afghanistan. They've not uh, allowed the economy to grow fast. They've not allowed companies to rise up. Everything is so controlled and restricted by them that there's no freedom to do business. Hopefully, things get better. I think that the West and the rest of the world should will give back aid that is owed to the Taliban, but not give any more. Give them what Afghanistan had before, and leave it at that. Stop giving aid after that, and then recognize that Taliban as a legitimate government in Afghanistan. I too do not like the Taliban and wish that the previous Afghan government was in power, but they are not going to come back anytime soon, and the Taliban has control over the country, total control. And so it is the de facto government there. So the world cannot interact with Afghanistan without recognizing the Taliban government, which is something necessary, and that will be the best way to help the people of Afghanistan who are suffering now. And not all of them are suffering. Many of them support the Taliban, and sadly, I can't find the alternative view, the pro-Taliban stance anywhere. I wish I could, then I could understand why so many Afghans supported the Taliban during the American war on terror in Afghanistan, and why the Taliban has so much support still today. This is the problem with the mainstream media where they're not getting the Taliban side of the story. So, yeah, I hope things get better for Afghanistan and maybe even the Taliban can become a better ruling power. I'll end this by wishing good luck to the people of Afghanistan.